Alright, looks like we're live. Welcome in, guys. Alright. I work alone. Alright. Sorry guys, got music going in my ears. Welcome in. So we're turning hard maple. So this is what we're making. Oh, wow. I minimized my screen. I don't know how I did that. Yep, so hard maple. So we're going to start out with the roughing gouge. Bring the diameter down. Now I'm on size. I'm using this wrench as a caliper. Now I have a line here. That's where my taper is going to end. So everything on this side is going to be 6 millimeter, and everything over here is going to be larger. So if you take the story stick, you can see how that lines up. Now we're going to switch from the roughing gouge to a spindle gouge. It's just less aggressive, leaves a better finish. For what I'm doing, I could do it all on the roughing gouge. I have a spindle gouge, might as well use it. So we're on size. Now I'm going to shut the lathe off while backing it off. So that way it'll just be held in by the clamp. If you look, we're running fine. This one we're going to make into an 8-inch shaft. So this is just this story stick. I'm just transferring lines over, that way they'll all be the same. This is a beading tool, it's V-shaped. I'm going to set that in. Come up to the top, there's a finial. We're going to lay that in with the skew and define the diameter underneath the finial. Come back with the spindle gouge, blend those lines together. I'm going to burn some decorative lines. For that, I just have some picture frame hanging wire. A lot of people use guitar strings. I have a lot of this wire. As you just saw, it does eventually break. So I start out with much longer pieces than I need, and when they break, I just reattach them. Come back on, and then we're just going to lay it in. Nope, we're not casting. We're just going to stand that out. No, these are actually, this is what the finished product looks like. That out. Then we're going to burnish the surface with some wood chips. Add a little bit of wax. Come up to the top, I'm going to form the finial. Drop spindles came before spinning wheels. They were what's used to make yarn. I'll demonstrate what they are as soon as I'm done with this one. I have one, I could start one or have one that's going. We're going to come to the back and then we're going to cut it off. We're going to make it a point. Not a problem, George. Not a problem. You know, you're a cat. I can't say no to cats, you know. I'm a cat guy. Alright. So yeah, this is what we're making. This one's already in use. It's getting full. I can bring it all the way out there. And this is the yarn I've spun. So this is wool. A sheep got a haircut. Then they washed it. Well, they picked the poop out of it. Then they washed it very gently to get rid of the lanolin. And then they combed or carded it so all the hairs are in the same direction. Hey, Gerald. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the spindle, we're going to spin it, and then with my... Let me pitch up a little bit so I'm not hitting things. So I'm going to spin the spindle, and then with my hands, I'm drafting, so I'm defining the thickness of the yarn and how much twist is going into the yarn. So this is the same thing a spinning wheel does. This is the same thing big commercial equipment does. So we add a twist. Now I'm going to butterfly to my hand, so I'm keeping it under tension. And then we're going to store it on the spindle. So this has a pattern over 2 under 1. So we're putting 2/3 on the top, 1/3 on the bottom. There's a bunch of different ways you can wind on. We're going to come up, put a 1/2 inch in, and that's enough to hold it, and then we're ready to spin again. So this is something small that you can fit in a project bag and take with you. The drafting is the same on this and a wheel. So if somebody wanted to go to a spinning wheel, this is a more economical way to start to see if they like it. I have both. I tend to spin on my spindles, and then I'll ply on my spinning wheels. All right. So let's get set up so we can make some more wood chips. Do I have any sheep? I do not. I did grow up on a little hobby farm, and we did have sheep. I know lots of people with sheep. Now, I prefer just to buy my roving already done from a mill and have it ready. But I can take a raw fleece. I can go through all the process. I can hand card it. So I can go from, you know, right after the sheep gets a haircut to a finished yarn. The nice thing about fiber arts is it's a deep rabbit hole, but you only have to, you know, go as deep as you want to. You can get your feet wet. You don't have... Hey, Raul, how's it going? Yeah, it's a post-apocalyptic life skill. I mean... Not a problem. Is it less expensive than buying? It depends on what you're making. I mean, if you're going to be spinning yarn, you're not going to be spinning most of the yarns that you'll see at like Walmart. Those are all tri-lobal fibers. If you've watched any one of those, you know, criminology shows, they tend to use acrylic, which is plastic. So if you buy like alpaca roving and spin it up, it would probably be less expensive than buying ready spun alpaca yarn. So, you know, people used to spin because they had to. Now they spin because they want exactly what they want. If that makes any sense. You know, you have complete control over what your supplies are going to be. So yeah, there's no money saving in this. So it's pretty much, it's a progression. A lot of people, how would you dye it? Well, you could dye the yarn before or after you spun it. It depends on what kind of look you want to it. As far as dyeing it, it could be as simple as taking this and buying a packet of Kool-Aid and then dipping it, making very, very, just a little bit of water, putting it in there, taking it out, microwaving it, and then that dye would set. Not awesome, but it will. You could dye it, you can use natural dyes. Some people use sawdust, like Paduke sawdust is like orangish red. They use that for dyeing as well. Or you could just go buy like acid dyes. Yeah. So, you know, if you did it beforehand, then you'd spin it or be colored. If not, you could spin it first, ply it so you have yarn, and then you could use multiple colors and kind of lay the yarn out and dye it in areas. So, yeah, there's a lot of different ways to dye it. Now, if you want to talk about interesting dyeing techniques, denim, blue jeans, that blue color. Oh boy. Is plant-based, but I have a hard time with the word mordorant. So to make the color more vivid, they use urea, which you can just buy now. You could buy, you know, you could buy urea now, not a big deal. But way back in the day, they would use urine to get an intense color. So stale urine. So you'd, yeah. They used urine a lot for dyeing and for tanning, for like making leather. So that's where the term piss poor came from. If you didn't have a lot of money, you could sell your urine. And if things got really bad and you were just no hope left, you didn't have a pot to piss in. So that's where that comes from. Hey, how's it going? And how is Mr. Rodriguez doing today? Doing good. So this one here is, I think it's just cherry. The last one was like mahogany. There you go. So I streamed a little bit this morning. So we started having our, you know, Black Friday sale online. Well, yeah, we actually started it on Thanksgiving. We're those early people. So we did packaging this morning, and then I did a couple hours, then we went and got some lunch and decided to go home and take a nap. So I use wax as a protectant on the wood. So this is paste wax, so it has a solvent in it, so when it dries it gets hard. Now most people are going to spin wool on these spindles, so there's always going to be a little bit of lanolin, so that'll help condition the wood. It just gives it more of a, gives it a different feel. You know, nobody ever says, wow, you put wax on this. But if I didn't, they'd be like, wow, this just feels kind of like raw. Do I know the history behind drop spindles? Well, we've been using drop spindles since at least Neolithic times. So we've been using drop spindles since we decided to stop running around naked, wearing animal skins, or wearing plant material, you know? So we learned early on that if you take fibers, you know, we have wool here, so I'm using wool, but you could use cotton, you know, you could use other animal fibers. So the deal is, with wool, if you look at it underneath a microscope, it has scales on it. So when you add twist to it, those scales interlock, and that's what gives yarn its strength. So I could sit here with my fingers and twist and twist and twist, but eventually we have an issue. We have nowhere to store this in order to twist it more. And that's where spindles came into play, because it gives you storage. Now, depending on what part of the world you're in, spindles will look entirely different. We're using drop spindles so they dangle in the air when you use them. There's also supported spindles that sit in a bowl, and those are good for like really short staple length things where you need to get a lot of twist in all at once. Like for cotton, using a support spindle is really good because things are really short, but you still want to spin really thin. Now, if you were letting it dangle and you were trying to spin super thin, the weight of the spindle would make it break. So these are normally called Turkish spindles. I would call them more Turkish/Mediterranean style. A lot of the Turkish spindles were quite big. You start getting into the Mediterranean and even north, you know, you'll see some in Egypt that are cross-arm spindles that are about this size, maybe a little bit bigger, but they're not huge. It's like anything else. We call French fries French fries. They're not from France. You like to put names on things? You know, you can find, you know, paintings in, like, the pyramids, you know, in Egypt, and they're spinning on those. Well, the bigger the spindle, the thicker the yarn. So you can make thick yarn with it, but you'd want a larger spindle. So this is my plying spindle. So plying is putting multiple pieces together to make thicker yarn. It makes a cabled yarn. So if you go to Walmart and look at the yarn, most of it's going to be acrylic, but it's going to be a bunch of little strands that are twisted together. And that's what this is good for, and this is good for thick yarns. So this is the largest spindle I make, and this is the smallest spindle I make. So this is for cobweb to lace weight, super tiny. This is for big chunky yarn. Now, can you spin big chunky yarn on this? Well, no, because there'd be so much. When you would spin the spindle, it would overwhelm the thickness of the yarn. It wouldn't allow it to twist. It would twist for like 2 seconds and then stop. So you have to be able to kind of get the correct size spindle for the weight of yarn you want to make. There's no like one size that does it all. Now you don't want to start out with a super tiny one because it's harder to learn on. You know, you're not going to be making, you know, inch-thick rope with it. But, you know, like the size of my pinky or the size of my finger you could get away with. I don't know why you'd want to, but you could. So my channel is basically about beginner woodworking craft type stuff for like the lathe and scroll saw primarily. I'm going to get into more 3D printing and laser engraving and CNC and that kind of stuff. Hey, how's it going, Eric? Welcome in. So yeah, this is my day job. This is what I do for a living. But I figured since I'm already here doing it, I might as well hang out with you guys. How quick can I make them, these shafts? Usually take under 5 minutes. If I wasn't paying attention to the chat, it'd probably be a little faster. We'll make pretty good time. Now, they're not all going to turn out. It's just wood's a natural material. You have no idea what internal stresses are on the inside. So the arms I cut out on a scroll saw. So after we're done putting the shafts on them, they will go and they will get sanded and balanced, and then they will get a finish on the arms. So I'm going to shut it off while backing it off so we can look. It's not too bad, not too shabby. A little bit of vibration on the end, so instead of making an 8-inch, we're going to drop it down to a 7-inch. So the main sizes for this particular piece of wood will be 4 1/4, 6, 7, and 8. So if I'm making a big batch, so what happened was I've been testing out a scroll saw. So Buck Tool sent me their 16-inch variable speed scroll saw, so I did a review on that. And my reviews aren't, hey, look at me take it out of the box, look, it goes up and down. I spent 16 hours cutting on it. So that 16 hours I was cutting out the arms. So by the time I was done with just the review, I had like 130 sitting over here. So I've been making shafts to kind of get a little bit caught up on that. So yeah, I'm currently kind of going through and thinking about automizing some of the processes, but this spindle here is always going to be all made by hand. It's just, I enjoy making the shafts, so. Yep, so I've been doing this full time since 2013. I got laid off a few months after I started making these. I started selling these just because one of my friends asked for one on Etsy, so I made her one. Before this, I was making, I've been on Etsy since like 2008. I was making wooden toys, and, you know, like little wooden word signs and kind of decor kind of stuff. But then when I started getting into this kind of took over. So now I'm kind of doing all the, I'm teaching people how to make all the like little artsy stuff, which if you're doing craft stuff, I mean, that's what you're going to be making. You're not going to, if you're doing craft woodworking, you're not going to be making big stuff, you know. If you're just starting out and all you can afford is a scroll saw, you're going to be making a bunch of little stuff and cutting your teeth on that. Anyway. Hey G, how's it going? Welcome in. What do you use it? What do you use the yarn for? You can use it for anything. It's yarn, knitting, crocheting, weaving, macrame. Here, I'll go grab some of my finished yarn. I got a skating. Yarn sticks, yeah, pretty much. So yeah, I spun this yarn on a spindle. So this was already dyed. So it's like a sports weight. I got to put this on dusty. Yeah, spinning yarn is very therapeutic. I used to enter my yarn in competitions at festivals, normally Wisconsin Sheep and Wool, and I stopped doing that because, I don't know. I would do rather well, and I think it would piss people off, so I'm like, I better not. 2 years ago, my girlfriend took Grand Champion, not Grand Champion, what do they call it? Best of Show for her yarn. I'm sure if I looked on Facebook, how expensive is the process? It's not too bad. I mean, if you want to, you can make your own drop spindle out of a CD, and you take a compact disc, and then you get a grommet and a dowel, or you can spend a few bucks and just buy a spindle that's already made. A lot of people, when they first start out, if they make their own spindle, they're shooting themselves in the foot. Because you're not necessarily going to make the best thing ever on your first try. These spindles, you can get them for in the 20s to a little over $100, depending on what you get. I sell beginner kits with... you get the spindle, you get a nitty knotty, is what you wrap the yarn on when you're done spinning it to make a hank. And you get a gauge and some fiber. I think it's like $35 for a kit. I mean, it's not bad. It's one of those hobbies where you don't have to spend a lot of money on, but once you start getting into it, you can. So you can start out relatively cheap, especially if you know anybody who also has like sheep or whatever. So I get this stuff from a mill I can't remember, it's somewhere in New England. This is relatively inexpensive, but it spins nice. So now if you're looking at buying a spinning wheel, a new spinning wheel will start at, for something decent, it's going to be probably a little bit more than 500. Good ones are over 1,000. You can get them off Facebook Marketplace, but if you don't know what you're looking at, there's a lot of spinning wheels that just look like spinning. We call them spinning wheel shaped objects. In the 1970s, people would decorate with spinning wheels. They're kind of old-timey. Harkening back to the good old days. So there were several companies that made spinning wheels that were never made to be used. A lot of them don't even have the ability to be used. A lot of them got turned into lamps. You just got to be careful. If you're interested in starting to spin, you should look to see if there's a spinning guild in your area, a fiber guild, which is basically a bunch of people who, hang out and have a non-profit. Usually they're at libraries. You go there and you hang out. It's like a stitch and bitch, pretty much. Or you go and you do demos for places. a good way to learn. Also, there's festivals all over the place. So if you find a fiber festival, you can sign up and take a beginner spinning class. Or you can go on YouTube and watch some videos. Nice thing about YouTube is you can find somebody you can relate with. If you go and take a spinning class and you're paying a bunch of money for it and you just don't click with the teacher, it can be a long class, you know? Yeah, double tapping the screen for likes would be great. That helps bring more people into the room. And maybe somebody else will ask a question that you didn't even think of, you know? I do knit and crochet. I'm a better crocheter than I am a knitter. You know, I tend to knit scarves. As far as hats go, like winter hats, I knit and crochet those. When you get down to like blankets, then I'm going to be crocheting them. So, I'm a big fan of like corner to corner blankets. But, you know, there's nothing wrong with a granny square. Hand me some yarn and crochet hook, a granny square will appear. Yeah, I don't really have a ton of time to be knitting, crocheting, or even spinning these days. Once we get through the holidays, then I'll have a little bit more downtime. So I got done with all my shows for the year about a month ago. Now we got the holidays, and then after the holidays, things will settle down a little bit. I've got a bunch of spinning wheels I need to repair. But I am hoping to do some craft streams. We have, so our workshop, we have a nice area out front where we can, I have a big couch out there and a table and stuff, so we can live stream and kind of hang out and make stuff together. So I'll probably be under my other account, my Snyder Spindles account for that. How do they break? Most of the time they break with people sitting on them. So you put it in like a project bag and somebody will end up sitting on the project bag or stepping on it. You know, occasionally we'll have animals chew on them. You'd think that'd be mainly dogs, but cats are probably about 50-50 as far as chewing on the shafts. I mean, these shafts are perfectly fine. But it's like a pencil, you know? You can break them if you want to. Typically the arms are pretty safe. If you drop them on cement, you might get a chip, but you can sand that out and rebalance it, so it's not the end of the world. Shafts are relatively inexpensive, so I suggest to people that are international that order them is just to order an extra shaft, just to be on the safe side. And that was even before the huge tariffs on everything. And if you live in Australia, just buy a second shaft. Well, if the shaft gets broken, that's just a replacement. If something bad happens to the arm, either you could sand them out yourself or you can send them back to me and I would rebalance them, sand and rebalance. If something bad happens, I replace them. Hey, how's it going? How was shopping? You survived. You survived Black Friday. So I really don't talk about the balancing aspect of the spindles. It's kind of like the secret sauce. You always have to have trade secrets, right? So if somebody orders something that's really bizarre, depending what it is, if I make something and I think it's too delicate, I'll tell them, hey, it's going to be really delicate. You're going to have to be really careful with it. Unfortunately, I can repair it, but unfortunately, I can't do it for free. But those cases are between. But I get some wacky requests on occasion. What was the wire I used? It was picture frame hanging wire that I took 2 strands off and then I applied them together to give me the thickness I wanted. And then I just put handles, so I'm just burning. It's a burning wire. You see a lot of turned objects that have black lines burned in them, especially like those Mexican tops. They tend to burn really big lines in. Or like those Mexican hot chocolate frother things. They tend to have a whole bunch of ornamental lines on them too. It's just a really, really fast way to put some detail in. Aluska, how's it going? Hopefully I said that close to right. I try. Yeah, so that was just little rolls of wire. I got a ton of it. A lot of people use guitar strings. You can use a bunch of stuff. Some people use playing cards. Alright, so if we look at this one, we turn. Oh, don't be a turd. Let's see if I turn that down. So this shaft here, there is a knot living right there. The grain on the rest looks pretty good. Yeah, you can take a playing card. If you cut a little channel, you could put like a plastic feeling playing card in there. I've never tried this, but this piece of sandpaper here, if I would hold it in, I would need to cut a channel for it. It's not firm enough, but sand, the aluminum oxide is killing me here. Yeah, it's not gonna work. So this is what the wire looks like. So it's multiple strands. They can take that and set it in there and make a really big line. They do make kits you can buy. They do make burning kits, and they're basically guitar strings that have balls on both ends. Electric guitar strings are wound around a little, looks like a little Cheerio with a hole in it. It wraps around there. They have that on both sides, and then they have little handles that you can put in. So that knot was big enough where I could get it into the chuck. If it was in this part of the wood, I'd have to make a shorter shaft with it. So whenever there's a knot or the grain of the wood is not perpendicular with the shaft, it's going to be bad. I'm sure one will come up that has. So you have to look at your wood and work around what's going on with it, you know. So when I pick up the wood, I usually look at it, and if there's something bad going on this end, I'll flip it around to the other end. Yeah. Yep, so for these I'm using hard maple, because the pores are really, really tight, and it has a little bit of flex to it. So it's not going to want to snap, break. Now, if I was going to use, like, oak, it wouldn't be smooth. There would be a whole bunch of little lines because the pores are so big. So think of wood as, like, grabbing onto a handful of, like, drinking straws. And then the tree uses those straws to get nutrients into the tree, to move nutrients around. So think of it like our veins. Well, if you have bigger veins, they're gonna be easier to see. So I like to use maple for these. Like hickory would be an ideal wood, but it has really big pores. So, which is fine if you're making a baseball bat, but when you're making something tiny. Now, I will make these out of exotic woods as well, depending on what it is. You know, if somebody wants an ebony, garboon ebony spindle, the entire thing ebony, I can do that. But it's going to be expensive because the wood is so crazy expensive. You know, if I have to pay $75 for supplies, or $100 on supplies, it's going to be an expensive spindle. I do not make them out of softwoods. There is a maker, I don't know if he's still around or not. I think in one of the Baltic countries, anyways, Eastern Europe, he was making them out of a select pine. And people in America, I had a few people get a hold of me to remake the shafts because they would break so easily. And, you know, trying to get something from halfway across the world. What's the weirdest wood I've ever used? Whew. So I've used some, it wasn't oak, but it came out of a bog somewhere, and it was like an ungodly old piece of wood. It was wood like, I want to say 7,000 years old or whatever. That was a long, long, long time ago. Yeah, I think it came out of a bog. They bring logs out that get buried underwater for long periods of time as well. Hello, A, how's it going? I really like Kingwood. My local mill had some Kingwood for a while. It's gorgeous. It's a rosewood. It's kind of like pinkish, kind of a deep pinkish purple color, and it's got really, really dark grain, and it's pretty stuff. But it's not really commonly available. So you could use, like, if it was like just you would almost need like a core on it. You would need something else on the inside. This one is going to be garbage. There's this look at that. Like I said, internal stresses in wood. If I was taking a piece of acrylic, you'd almost have to put like a metal shaft on the inside, because just turning it would be an adventure. When that stuff gets hot, it starts getting unstable. But you could use like resin impregnated woods. Those would work fine. And then you don't have to put a finish on them because they have that resin. For that, I would use carbide tools, not the traditional tooling. So at the end of the day, everything comes down to cost and time. So when I first started making these, I went to a fiber show. And I really quickly realized that there was not really a good medium price range. Either they were inexpensive and garbage, or super nice and super expensive. So what I wanted to do was kind of be right in the middle. Where, you know, it's a nice spindle, but you're not spending a ton of money. Because if you're dropping $100 on a spindle, you're not going to take it out on the beach with you. You're not. It's a tool. You know, it's like you should. It shouldn't be so expensive that you're scared to use it. At least that's how I look at it. So that was always my goal: is to make things that work awesome, but not necessarily have the shine and polish of something that's really super expensive. You're the one. Well, I was always told that I have a face for radio. I don't know about the boys. But definitely the face. And I got that Midwestern Wisconsin accent. I went to college in Upper Michigan. Now that's an accent. It makes the Minnesota accent seem a little bit easy to understand. So if you've ever watched Fargo, yeah, Upper Michigan's a lot like that. Just the setting structure was a little bit different too. So there's an episode of The Office where Kevin decided to start using less words. Less words, save time, you know, and that's pretty much how the UP speech kind of goes. You would never say, let's go to the mall. They would just say, let's go mall, eh? Like, what? You're missing some words in there. So, George the Cat, how old do I sound? That's a big question. Young? I am 50. So I should be having a midlife crisis. Yep. It's pretty scary. And I attribute that to, you know, clean living and dirty thinking. But my beard started turning gray in my 30s, so. Yeah, I was watching a TikTok, and it was a guy just talking. I'm like, oh yeah, this dude's in his 20s. And then he shows his face, and he's got a big old white beard. I'm like, wow. I get it. And my girlfriend's like, yeah, you might sound young, but your hands look old. You have old hands. So, whatever old hands is. Yep, so I've been self-employed for the last 13 years. Prior to that, I was an assembler on an assembly line for vehicles, for trucks. And before that, I was an operator at a bindery that makes magazines. So the ironic part is, when I was like doing the assembly work and stuff, I had no hair on my hands or my fingers. And then, you know, I wasn't allowed to wear a watch, but yeah, the hair on my arms didn't start till here, because every time I was reaching in and everything, I rubbed off all the hair. I'm kind of like a baby. You know, babies that are born with a bunch of hair, they rub it off. Why do I have wax written on here? So people know it's wax? I tried to include some, people were asking me if that was salmon, which does sound like a delicious idea. But I'd be scared about getting attacked by bears. It's kind of like, why do I have the sign? Yeah, I got the sign because people ask a lot. So yeah, if you're just tuning in, we are making Turkish drop spindles. We are turning the shafts out of hard maple. So yeah, this is just production work. This is my day job. Normally it's me and the girlfriend, but after we took the nap, we worked a half day. I don't think that they thought I was putting salmon on wood, but I had the tone sitting there. Well, it could be for snacking, for mid-turning snacking. So I decided, I took a nap too, and I woke up and I'm like, oh man, I feel bad. I didn't get my work done, so I came back. And I figured it'd be kind of nice. Normally I'm done before 5 p.m., so I can hang out with my working people. So we're starting to build up a little bit of an inventory for our next show. Our next show is not till March. So the majority of these are going up on the website, but we're holding some aside. So when we get to doing the shows, you know, we don't have to make a whole bunch all at once. And I've been in a streaming mood lately, so might as well. Okay, this one is not very straight. Let's stick the pin in here so you can see how far off that is. Let me rechuck it. I'll spin it around, try chucking it the other way. It might work. This side's a little bit better. Yeah, we'll do it that way. But yeah, so they taper, so... Do you work at home? I rent a shop. Here, I'll give you a little... I rent a commercial workspace, so... We were lucky enough to find a space that was, sorry, my phone stand got all messed up. Alright. So yeah, this is, blurry, but there we go. Yeah, this is my workshop. Then there's a couple rooms in the back. So I keep my dust extractor and my drum sander and my planer back here. And then I have wood storage, and then like shipping boxes storage. There's deep storage back there. I do use the scroll saw in making a lot of the spindles, so this is my main production area. It's a nice comfy couch, chop saw, router there, CNC machine, and then this is my like little recording area that I do a lot of the tutorial videos for. So this is the buck tool saw that I just tested. It's a nice saw. No complaints. Then we have a bathroom and then a pantry. And then out front, we got a little retail area, but we really don't use it. So this is our packaging area. And then this is where we keep a lot of our things that are on the websites. So that side's Etsy, that side's Shopify. And then the top whirls that are up for sale are over here. So, still drop spindles, they're just a different shape. So I worked, and then we got the couch. So this is where we're going to live stream, like doing crafting stuff on. So since we weren't using this for retail, I thought might as well have a big comfy couch. And then, you know, be able to take naps and, you know, watch TV. So come in here, you know, you need your pickle rick. We also have a full basement that I do finishing in. You know, the shop piano that you found on the side of the road. We have some 3D printers. One laser engraver. 2 laser engravers and 3 laser engravers. And they all do different things. So that's why there's 3 of them. Another drill press. So we got a little sanding area here, and over there I have another one. So yeah, we got a nice little workshop. This is where spinning wheels go to be repaired, or to die, depending on what time of year it is. And that goes to the hallway outside. I'm not sure why that's private. So, yeah, I worked from home for quite a while. So it's nice to be in a workshop. So when you go home, you go home. Get a little separation. So this building used to be a grocery store. It was made in 1900. So the ceilings look like crap, but there's a lot of intact tin on the ceiling from before they had electricity. So it's kind of the classic Midwestern, you know, where you got buildings basically connected to each other to make up a main street. So at one point in time, this was a little bustling town. The railroad put in a train yard here. So that's what built up this downtown here. But most people went south to the next town over. So that's a huge town. This is a little one. So I'm in one of those just little old brick buildings. There's 2 upstairs. We make noise, but we don't make a lot of noise. It could be much worse. Yeah, it's a great location. Oh, it's about a 5-minute drive from my house. In the summertime, we walk here. It takes about 15 minutes to walk. Nice. So if I want to take on an apprentice, it's not like I'm bringing somebody into my house. If people want to pick up product, it's not like people are coming to my house. Yeah. It's really nice. And it's really helped kind of switch the work balance. Because when you work out of your house, it feels like all you do is work. You know, if somebody sends you a message, you're right on top of it. You need your own life too. I believe this is Bolivian rosewood. Very pretty. Oh, I know, right? Boy, whenever this guy's live streaming, it seems like he's making spindles. That time is coming. After the holidays. When I make project videos, I do live stream those as well, so. God. It's like that cobbler is just always making shoes. Yeah, I tend to live stream this and then cutting out the arms. It's just because it's a nice static camera. Yeah, I kind of lost dedication today. So we had to go to the post office. We started a sale yesterday, so we had quite a few orders to get done. So after packaging, I live streamed for a little over an hour. And then we went to drop it off at the post office, and we got some lunch. And then we decided to go home and take a nap. Next thing I know, it's 4 p.m. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go back to the shop for a few hours. Some people say that there was a couple Bloody Marys for lunch to blame, but who knows? How do I keep my chisel sharp? I use CBN wheels. Actually, it's about time to put an edge on these anyway. Flip it over here. So yeah, these wheels are impregnated with cubic boron nitrate. So pretty much like a diamond wheel. Just it's not diamonds, it's cubic boron. And there's advantages over diamonds, even though they are a girl's best friend. So I like to mark my cutting edge with a Sharpie just to verify that when I'm sharpening, I'm actually sharpening and not just grinding like the bottom surface. I need the cutting edge and a toe pick. Got a slow speed grinder. I've got nothing against, there's a lot of different ways to sharpen. So, same thing you got work, you just don't know how to use it. So if you had like the white compressed material wheels, you would need a big guard around there because they can explode. These are solid, they're not going to go anywhere. So I have the angle already set. So there There we go, we ground off that Sharpie. So I have a one-way jig on there as far as the sharpening goes. If I was woodturning, I would have this in there, and then you set that in, and then you can do fingernail grinds. But we're doing spindle. We do spindle work, so we don't need to worry about that. Yeah. Right? So when I'm setting the angle, I use these. So like those white, I assume they're aluminum oxide wheels, they change size because you're constantly resurfacing them to make them flat. Where the metal ones always stay the same size, so you can just take this, put this on the wheel, and that's how you set your angle. Which actually works out really good. No thought involved. Alright. Sorry about that. My phone is a little bit too low and it's hitting the power button. A little bit too low and it's hitting the power button. So my gouges, I use 45 degrees. And then I use 25 for my skew. So if you see the skew, it is ground. It's 25 per side. Yeah, have a good one. Thanks for hanging out. Much appreciated. Then we're just burning some decorative lines with some wire. You guys do me a favor, if you're watching this on your phone, you can give it a couple clicks on your screen. Just tap the screen a couple times. It'll help bring some more people in here. And you won't even be held responsible. Yeah, it's worth a try. Another one of the Bolivian rosewoods. Those are pretty. It's really hard to see. Once this gets sanded out, it's just going to be gorgeous. So I've been looking for a replacement for Coco Bolo, and that's where the Bolivian rosewood comes into play. The mill that I've been at they have not had Coco Bolo for a long time. So it might be an importation issue, I'm not sure. So these wood mills, they go to big auctions, and they buy it from there. So either they went for too much money, or they didn't win the auction, whatever. So I really don't have a set time for when I live stream. I kind of live stream all over the place. So if you want to hang out with me, the best thing to do would be subscribe and click the bell. That way you'll be notified when I come online. And then when it much, you can just click it again and shut it off. It's pretty easy. Yep, I'm trying to get more subscribers than a different YouTuber that drives me nuts, and I'm like less than 1,000 away. So that's kind of the goal I'm working towards. So the bottom here gets sanded off in the next operation. Messa, how's it going? Welcome in. So we're just hanging out on the lathe tonight, making a mess. Making wood chips like they're going out of style. AKA man glitter. This thing is beyond, yeah, that'd be a bad one. It didn't even go through the machine correctly. Look at that. So, boo, quality control, guys, quality control. So we are turning hard maple. I'm getting towards the bottom of my box. So I order these directly from the manufacturer, and they're made to order. So I actually have to place another order now. The last batch I bought 600 of them the last time. I'm down to maybe 75. So it's time to place an order. So I think we're gonna make another 2 or 3 of these, and then we'll probably call it a stream. I need to make some phone calls, and then I might jump on TikTok for a little bit, because life's an adventure. So I'm trying to figure out what I want to do for the next video I'm making. I think I want to make 3D printed things that you can make on your 3D printer that help with woodworking. But that's going to involve printing out a bunch of stuff, so that's going to take some time. So that might be a 2-week away kind of thing. Maybe I'll just do a little simple keychain project or something. I'll figure something out. Yeah, when you're doing production work, it's all about having everything where you need it, so you're not wasting a bunch of time between. Because turning is going to take the same amount of time no matter what. The only time you're going to save time is between the turning. You know, they say NASCAR races are won in the pits. Basically the same here as well. So, like this little wrench, I keep on a magnet on top. You know, my gauge magnet. If I don't throw it on the bench, my burning wire on a magnet. My pencil on a magnet. It just makes things a little bit smoother. You know, my sandpaper's right there. My wax is right there. You know, it doesn't matter if you're making one thing. If you're doing hobby stuff, you know, take your time. But when you're making something to keep a roof over your head, you want to make it as fast as you can. You don't want quality to suffer, but I'm not saying you have to sit there and do a time study and write every step down and make a spaghetti chart and try to figure out how you can do things more efficiently. I worked for 2 different companies that went to get ISO, whatever, 9000 compliant or whatever. Companies spend a lot of money changing things around to get those certifications. We're looking at SMED, or single minute exchange of die, which is basically trying to figure out the most efficient way you can do something. Lean manufacturing. Ugh. Alright. How many can you make an hour? Usually they're about 5 minutes. So 12 an hour. If I'm making smaller ones, they're quicker. Just because I'm not taking off so much. Probably, the majority is probably closer to 4 minutes, but when you start dealing with like this kind of stuff where you see it's not straight, we'll try to salvage this one. But you know, this is one component, you know. He's also making the arms, and then after this they're sanding. But luckily there's 2 of us, so me and my partner. So she does the majority of the sanding, and she lays out the arms that I cut out, and she drills a hole. And yeah, so she does a bunch of stuff. I do a bunch of stuff. So works out really nice. At least for me, it does. I don't know about her. She's doing a lot. So we're gonna make this one into a 6-inch. When we're done with this one, we'll do a count, because my table is empty when we started, and we're going to have an hour and a half in here in a couple minutes. So yeah, these come in a bunch of different sizes. It's all depending on what kind of thickness of yarn you want to spin. All right. So we got these little mahogany arms here. About 12 an hour, plus or minus a few. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. I'll probably be back probably Monday. So, hope to see you guys then. Have a great day, and make stuff.